With the introduction of Sun God Nika in the Wano Country arc, Luffy evolved from an ordinary Paramecia-type Devil Fruit user to the prestigious mythical Zoan type. Accordingly, Luffy's abilities also smoothly evolved to Gear 5th. So how do Luffy's abilities fare in the current storyline after these updates? First, let's look at the initial Rubber Fruit abilities from 2 years ago, what we'll call Gear 1st. When he first emerged in the East Blue Saga, Luffy made incredible use of what seemed like an ordinary rubber fruit. With just a few casually developed techniques, he could dazzle audiences. Moves like Gum Gum Battle Axe, where he lifts his right foot to attack, or Gum Gum Spear, where he twists his foot into a spiral for a high-speed rotation attack. There were also the classic Gum Gum Gatling and Gum Gum Storm. These techniques were not only entertaining, but also gave viewers a visceral sense that they would truly hurt enemies when landed. However, after encountering just one Tekai, Iron Body technique, these abilities became nearly obsolete. By the current Elbaf arc, they've completely disappeared. Besides occasionally stretching his arms to climb, Luffy absolutely refuses to use Gear 1st when facing enemies. Despite these ordinary techniques once defeating Crocodile and NL, in the current storyline they would struggle against even common foot soldiers. Thus, these abilities have been gradually phased out with each update to the story. Next came Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd, which Luffy developed during the Enies Lobby arc. When these two techniques first appeared, they were so powerful that Oda-sensei imposed certain limitations on them. For instance, while Gear 2nd enhanced Luffy's speed and attack power, overusing it would reduce his lifespan and leave him immobilized. Meanwhile, transforming into Gear 3rd decreased Luffy's speed but granted him tremendous attacking power, enough to destroy a marine battleship with a single punch. However, in the current storyline, these two techniques have also virtually disappeared. Even on the rare occasions when Luffy does use Gear 2nd or Gear 3rd, he almost always needs to supplement them with Armament Haki or Busoshoku Haki. We almost never see Luffy using these techniques without additional enhancements anymore. Therefore, these two abilities have effectively been shelved in the current version of the story. Then comes Gear 4th, which Luffy revealed in Dressrosa after his 2-year training. When Gear 4th first appeared, it exuded an overwhelming presence. Not only could Doflamingo not break through its defense despite his best efforts, but more importantly, Doflamingo was defeated after taking just 3 punches from Gear 4th. Although the initial side effects of Gear 4th were even greater than those of Gears 2nd and 3rd, seeing how its speed and attack power far surpassed the previous gears, plus gaining super strong defensive capabilities, everyone felt that Luffy could at least ride this technique until a saga close to the final chapter. However, after the battle with Katakuri in the Whole Cake Island arc, this technique was immediately obsolete when it appeared in the Wano Country arc. Though outdated, it could still be used against Kaido with some added haki, but by the Egghead Island arc, this technique became completely unusable. The Gear 4th that once defeated Doflamingo in 3 punches couldn't even damage Seraphim by the middle of the Egghead arc. Eventually, when fighting against Kizaru, Luffy specifically tried this technique again, but finding it quite inadequate, he stopped using Gear 4th even to clear minor enemies. When facing Rods' small pet snake, Luffy skipped Gears 1st through 4th and went straight to activating Gear 5th. Finally, there's the awakened Gear 5th technique that Luffy realized during the Wano Country arc. This ability has now become Luffy's main fighting technique. Whether dealing with small fry or fighting formidable enemies, Luffy activates Gear 5th. After all, Gear 5th is indeed too convenient for Luffy, while his other techniques have fallen behind. They not only deal mediocre damage, but are also more troublesome to use. Looking at Luffy's progression from Gear 1st to 5th, we can observe a very common pattern. Whenever a technique suddenly becomes less effective, Luffy inevitably discovers a brand new ability soon after. For example, Gear 1st was quite powerful at the beginning in the East Blue arc, but by the Enies Lobby arc, it couldn't even break through Tekai. So when Gear 1st damage output became inadequate, Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd were immediately born. When Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd struggled against Doflamingo with mediocre damage, Luffy promptly developed Gear 4th. Similarly, after Gear 4th was easily countered by Kaido's Thunder Bagua, Luffy quickly realized Gear 5th in the subsequent battle. Therefore, if in future storylines Gear 5th suddenly becomes less effective, without a doubt, Luffy's Gear 6th, or some reverse gear, will almost certainly appear. Well, that's all for this episode's ramblings. I'm Amy, and I'll see you next time. There are still people who think Lucci was bluffing when he said this line, "As long as Kizaru and I are here, all of you will be annihilated." In reality, he wasn't lying, nor was he trying to intimidate by hiding behind Kizaru's strength after he arrived. The truth is, if Kizaru hadn't held back, none of the 10 Straw Hat members would have escaped. They would have all met their end on Egghead Island. Lucci's statement does seem to overestimate himself, but he's not as weak as some fans make him out to be. As a CP0 prodigy with 800 years of inherited techniques, his strength is absolutely not to be underestimated, and his awakened Devil Fruit ability shows his exceptional talent. Earlier, he had already endured 2 rounds of attacks from Luffy, was severely injured by an Emperor-level fighter, and still managed to exchange multiple blows with Zoro. That's impressive enough. Honestly, aside from the 3 main fighters of the crew, the rest of the Straw Hats wouldn't stand a chance against him. However, what truly determined the outcome of this battle was the Marine Admiral. Just like in the Onigashima battle in Wano, the All-Stars were merely appetizers. The real decisive factor was the confrontation between Kaido and Luffy. Lucci understood this perfectly. Having worked for CP for so many years, he was absolutely aware of Kizaru's strength, which is why he became so cocky, as if injected with adrenaline, after Kizaru arrived. Unfortunately, he failed to read Kizaru's heart. From the moment he set foot on the island, Kizaru showed little fighting spirit. Those he was ordered to kill were all his good friends, his apprentice, and his beloved nephew. He couldn't bring himself to deliver the killing blow to any of them. The sense of justice behind him compelled him to complete the mission assigned by Saturn, but his humanity made it impossible to not feel compassion. Lucci never guessed that Kizaru would hold back, and even less that he would later bring food to Luffy. If Kizaru had fought seriously from beginning to end, Lucci's statement would no longer be what fans call a lie, but a prophecy. Speed is power, and Kizaru's strength is certainly on par with the 4 Emperors. He easily blocked Luffy's devastating kick, defended against all of Snake Man's irregular attacks, and even against Gear 5 Luffy, the result was only a stalemate because Kizaru was holding back. Kizaru only became momentarily stunned after taking a solid hit from Dawn Rifle, while Luffy experienced an even longer recovery period after returning to his normal state. The bottom line is that even with his awakened powers, Luffy still has a noticeable gap compared to the 4 Emperors. His victory over Kaido was already highly controversial. In the Onigashima battle, Kaido had gone through 5 rounds of fighting, while Luffy had eaten food, replenished his strength, and even regained full health after activating Gear 5. By then, Kaido was already severely exhausted, so I can't imagine how Luffy could win against Kizaru at full strength. Moreover, the Marines also had Saturn on their side, whose immortality ability alone was enough to make him a formidable opponent. The 9 Vice Admirals and 30,000 elite Marines also presented an insurmountable obstacle. In the end, if not for Emmett borrowing Joy Boy's hockey, the Straw Hat crew truly would not have escaped.